when Donald Trump was, shall we say, booted from grace in America, I said I was always very, very jealous of the American people, because now at least America is having a normalcy somewhat reformed, shall we say. Normal service has been resumed, more sensible people are in place, and things are starting to get along, chugging along nice and normally, while the Republicans seem to be in a complete spiral downwards. And unfortunately, we seem to be in a place similar to where America was, almost like in 2017, where it's happened and we're seeing it happen, but we still can't believe that this is happening. The only thing is, this has been going on now for at least more than 6 years at this point. And we are coming up to a very interesting stage now where, I've said before, the Brexiteers made some big promises. And a lot of people, especially in these seats that voted for Brexit because they voted for it on the understanding that by doing so would make their lives better. In somehow, some way, shape or form, that is what would happen. And of course, that hasn't happened. And yes, some seats might be getting an extra amount of money, but these aren't any, shall we say, long-term proper situations to really improve the economics and industry around the town and bring jobs there. It's more just here's just your one-off bribe, and once again it's short-term politics. And unfortunately, we are seeing this engaged with Boris with our coronavirus restrictions, because next week they are meant to be gone permanently. And this creates such a worrying scenario, because only about 20% of our population is being vaccinated, which creates perfect environments, essentially, for potential mutations. So essentially, if a variant does mutate here, that it makes vaccines immune, because again, just because you've had your coronavirus vaccine does not mean that you are immune to the virus. It means you have antibodies, which means that your body can fight off the virus better, but it doesn't stop you from getting it. And we are now in a very worrying situation where if we get a mutation that is immune to these viruses, which again, we are creating the exact perfect scenario for that to happen, we could be in huge trouble. And this is only but the fault of Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party. And I've always said, if you want a good view, a good outside view of what is happening to your country, go and look at the foreign press. And today we are turning to a newspaper from Denmark, I think it is, called El Demoria. I think that's how you say it. I'm not too sure. But the title is How Britain Became the First Country in the World to Surrender to COVID. So before we do jump into that, please do hit that like and share button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And thank you to all those people who do support the channel that way. So, on with this. Like I say, the title is How Britain Became the First Country in the World to Surrender to COVID. So, you might have long thought America, or even your country, was the dumbest in the world. My friend, here's a situation so surreal that it's difficult to even put into words. Nevertheless, let me be foolhardy enough to try. See that chart above? The one country that sticks out like a sore thumb? That's poor, stupid, beleaguered Britain. Every other rich country, and plenty of poor ones, COVID cases are falling thanks to vaccines, lockdown, and a hard year of some fighting a deadly pandemic. But in Britain, in the middle of an explosive new wave, or a deadly new variant, and in this moment, wait for it, that Boris Johnson's government has decided to lift all restrictions in the name of freedom. Did you get that? Yes, you read that right. If your brain is hurting, don't worry, mine is too. I mean, mine certainly is. As are the brains of what the sane and thoughtful few Brits are left on what is soon becoming to be called Plague Island. So let me say it again. Britain's government is lifting all of its restrictions and precautions just as a dangerous new wave of COVID is exploding. That is the greatest abdication of responsibility by a government since the last World War. Since COVID is the greatest crisis since a world war, and the British government is doing exactly what it appears to be doing, surrendering to COVID. That is a level of human folly that is completely earth-shaking. It is the stuff that would make Achilles weep or Orwell laugh. What kind of condemnation of idiots defies to lift all restrictions and precautions just as a let me give you an example of what lifting all restrictions and precaution means. No more masks, no more social distancing, no more closings and cancellations, no more anything. Life is just to return to normal because apparently the way you beat a pandemic is by pretending it doesn't exist anymore. That is the kind of folly that is on par for the course for the conservative governments. But this level of stupidity is truly breathtaking because it's a decision that can never be undone. And I'll come back to that. For now, Britain will have no COVID restrictions and precautions in just a few days. But now is an especially crucial time in Britain. It is at the moment that the Delta wave of COVID is exploding. Its critical window when short days or weeks could stop this variant for good. But instead, Britain is throwing its arms wide open to embrace a deadly virus. It doesn't take a genius to see that doubling times already in a week will increase and the exponential growth will accelerate. And of course, Boris Johnson himself predicts that over 50,000 cases a day in 2 weeks. How many is that? In America, by contrast, there were just 4,000 cases on July 4th. But America is 4.5 times the population of the UK and 50,000 cases per day. That means it is put on per capita basis, and the UK will have about 50 times the number of cases than America does. 50 times. That should strike you as a number that is completely mind-boggling, bonkers, and suicidally insane. After all, America isn't even a country that's done particularly well on COVID, say like New Zealand or South Korea. To have 50 times the cases America does on a population for adjusted bias, to many to think that is a actual desirable or even acceptable normal is completely bananas. It is a level of human stupidity so earth-shatteringly insane that it can scarcely be expressed in words. You can just see the outcome from here, which is miles away. There isn't just any wave of disease after all. Boris Johnson says astonishingly that COVID is just like the flu and we'll all just have to learn to live with it. But COVID is not the flu. It's about 50 to 100 times deadlier. Now the Delta variant is now exploding in Britain, which is even worse than having both the highest rates of hospitalisation and infection. That's why British scientists and doctors are rightly concerned about their country becoming a COVID factory. It will be, and the British population is kept in the dark by about 5 key facts. A. Only about half the population has had 2 doses of vaccines. And B, the vaccine is the AstraZeneca vaccine, which C, only has a 33% efficacy against the Delta variant strain after 1 dose, and B, only has an approximately 60% efficacy after 2 doses. So, what happens when the Delta variant meets a half-vaccinated population with strikingly low levels of protection? It breeds. And the faster it breeds, the more it mutates. And bang, that's how you get new variants. And the more vaccine-resistant ones, the more infectious ones, the deadlier ones. And Britain is poised to become the world's hottest COVID zones. It is a pulsing COVID factory. But that is anything the same nation should actually want to be. So, let's think about 2 steps ahead and let's get back to 1. Lifting precautions and restrictions now, just as the Delta wave is exploding, is going to cause a COVID catastrophe in short order. By the end of summer, probably well before, the poor, struggling NHS will be breaking down, but that's when mortality rates will really explode, as health systems are overwhelmed. It's a recipe for utter, sheer lunatic disaster. Imagine driving a new Ferrari headlong straight into a towering wall of rock. Crash. It's the kind of disaster, pure, distilled, mindless self-destruction. Now let me put this a bit more formally for what has just happened in Britain. Britain has just become the first country in the world to surrender to COVID. You might object to that. What about Russia, Brazil, South Africa? Some countries like Brazil and India never fought it much at all, thanks to the absolutely cack-handed demagoguery. Others are trapped in the jaws of incompetence, like South Africa, and there are others like just like poor and broken, say like Pakistan or even Venezuela. But no country in the world yet has surrendered to COVID, except for Britain. And that is what is really happening. The British government, astonishingly, is throwing in the towel, admitting defeat, and throwing its hand up in the air, declaring COVID epidemic illness is not even bothering even to fight it anymore. As Britain surrenders to COVID, Delta variant will overwhelm it. The NHS will be pushed beyond a breaking point, mortality rates will soar, and COVID will indeed become an epidemic, a chronic seasonal illness that will mutate fast and new variants will arise every year. And of course, Made in Britain will be the label that we most apply to these new deadly viruses from now on. So have you heard of the new Lambda variant? No, it makes the Delta look mild. It's really bad, and yet Britain's now opening itself up to that more than now. And there is no other country in the world that has simply surrendered to COVID. Not one. Even the handful that never fought it. But in most, the fight does go on, even in far poorer ones. Once colonial subjects of the British Crown, in nearly every other country in the world, there are still, rightly, plenty of COVID restrictions, even in America for Pete's sake. People were told to wear masks and social distance and so forth. The fight is not yet over. So why surrender? Well, this British government, perhaps the most cynical one in modern history, among the most malign ever, has made a simple calculation. A foretold one, and it goes like this. That A, Brits are now, on the whole, so apathetic and ignorant that B, they'll think of being overrun by a deadly virus as being freedom, because B, they're so expendable that they don't even know it, and they don't even care to know it. And the sad, funny, analysing layer of even more sinister stupidity this whole sorry affair is the British government is probably right. Even well-meaning Brits are now so deluded and brainwashed by the nationalist propaganda being churned out by the Brexit-tastic government and media that the culture war, they don't even know the 5 basic facts above about vaccine efficiency and rates and so forth, and the average Brit seems to be happily stewing in a boiling soup of nationalist rage, fan-fictional vitriol at scapegoats and self-deceit, that even somehow they now hate the Europeans thanks to Brexit and nothing else even matters. Destroying Britain's economy and culture and society just wasn't enough for this government. That much happened due to Brexit. Imports are down permanently, plenty of sectors having simply collapsed. British culture, once the finest in the world, is now a joke. Witness the rise of GB News to the right of Fox News, while Channel 4, one of the world's most innovative broadcasters, is sold off for basic peanuts. See how Britain once used to be a tolerant, gentle, wise and peaceful, kind of funny place and generous. Now look at it, boiling alive in a toxic waste of its own hate, cruelty, stupidity and arrogance. And I agree, we've come to create an absolute perfect storm, and I do worry what happens from here. I really, really do. Because he gets one part absolutely right. There's no going back from this. If a mutant, again, most of our population is AstraZeneca. I've got Pfizer. I've had my 2 Pfizer jabs, but I know people have had the AstraZeneca one, and like I say, AstraZeneca, you're only about 33%, efficiency. At 2, you're only about 60%. We are creating the perfect breeding ground for new viruses. And the next COVID variant is going to come from the UK. And I've said before, I worry about next year, but I've said before, we are going to suffer from the ABCs: austerity, Brexit, and COVID. is going to all form together to create a perfect storm. And I have no idea how our absolutely incompetent government is going to get out of that. So, as always, thanks for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, as well as one off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can indeed buy me a coffee. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time.